All right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time to join me today for the calendar edit for CEOs. For those of you who I have not met before, and those of you who are watching the replay, my name is Melissa Swink, and I'm the founder and CEO of Melissa Swink & Co. And I'm really excited to present on this topic today. I have been kind of geeking out over the concepts of time management and studying how productive people and successful people really leverage their time and structure their days, probably for about the last decade or so. And I played around with a lot of different ways to structure my time and structure my work schedule over the years. And really, this past fall, and earlier this year, I discovered two ways that I really have found to be effective for me personally. And one of those I shared on my blog earlier this year about a calendar audit where you can go back through the previous quarter or year and identify the things that were worth your time, energy, money, the things maybe that didn't pan out so well in terms of those areas, and things that really made you happy and were joyful. That's a great exercise. Certainly feel free to look back at that blog on my website. But wanted to mention that because that is an event that we're going to be having later on this year. So if that's something of interest to you to walk through step by step in a group setting like this, definitely keep an eye out for that in your email later on this year. But today we're going to be focusing on really creating your dream calendar as a CEO. And this actually was born, this event, I should say, was born out of a survey that I sent out to all of our clients at the end of last year. Just curious, like what types of information or things would you like to learn more about in the coming year? And one that popped up over and over again was time blocking. And time blocking in and of itself, it doesn't sound particularly exciting, but I think when we get the right combination of time blocks put together and really build out that structure, and again, that dream calendar, it can be a real game changer. So, this is something that I did when I did a business retreat for myself last fall. And it was been such a game changer. I wanted to share the concepts with all of you today. So, that being said, just wanted to share a little bit more about me and my background before we spend a little time getting to know one another and then diving into the workshop for today. So, on a personal note, I live in Green Bay, Wisconsin with my family. I have a 9-year-old daughter. I have two cats. We used to have dogs. We are now just a cat family right now. But I enjoy things like cooking, maybe not so much in the day to day and cooking on a regular basis for my family. Of course, that's something I need to do, but I particularly enjoy spending some time on the weekends when we're not so time constrained, experimenting with new recipes, maybe open some wine, enjoying that process. I'm interested in wellness. I do prioritize my health through things like nutrition, exercise. I recently joined Pure Barre here in the Green Bay area a couple of months ago, and that's been something fun to add to my physical health journey as well. I enjoy traveling, and last but certainly not least, I love reading. I'm in a book club that meets every month, and I've been meeting with them for 3 years now, which has been really fun. So that's a little bit about me personally. Before we dive into today's content, I just wanted to share a little bit more background about my business and kind of how that changed over the years, particularly in regards to how I spend my time. So, for those of you who I've not met before, again, I am the founder and CEO of Melissa Swink & Co., and I have a team of virtual assistants who provide administrative and marketing support for small businesses and nonprofits so that they can save money, and be able to grow and scale their organizations. So, today I have a team of about 20 people, and we work together very closely to serve our clients. But that was not always the case. So, when I started my business in 2012, I primarily worked on my own. Prior to owning my virtual assistant business, I worked in the corporate world in logistics and operations. When I left the corporate world, I started doing process improvement consulting. And when I was working as a consultant, One of the things that became very, very clear to me early on in that work was that most business owners knew what they wanted to be doing or what they should be doing, but there just weren't enough hours in the day for them to do it themselves. Or maybe they didn't have the expertise or the skill set in order to get that done. But also, on top of that, maybe it wasn't enough to warrant hiring a traditional part time or full time employee to do those things for them. So during that time, I was introduced to the concept of a virtual assistant, and I knew right away that that was the solution to so many of the challenges that those business owners were facing. So when I first started my business, I worked primarily on my own for about the first 6 years. It was me and my clients working very closely together. I thought I wanted that small, manageable business, but over time, that small, manageable business started to manage me. I had grown to the point where I reached my own capacity. I couldn't take on any more clients, couldn't take on any more projects. No matter how I structured my time, no matter how I packaged out my services, because I was the one doing all the things in my company, ultimately my income was tied to the amount of hours that I could work, the amount of output that I could give. And so I ultimately ended up hiring a team. And since then, especially in the last couple of years, we've really grown. We have quadrupled our revenue, and I still maintain a work week of about 20 to 25 hours. And really, what the bottom line is through the evolution of my business, the way that I spent my time has changed. So, in the beginning, it was me doing all of the things in the business, working on client work and their deliverables, doing all the back end behind the scenes. I was all of it. During some of the early stages of having the team, I still was very, very client facing and running the back end of my business, but I did have people behind the scenes who were there helping me to serve those clients and get their work done. And then now today, my team is very client facing, very involved directly with our clients and serving them to the point where I spend the majority of my time on business development, leadership, and things like that. So, the way that I've spent my time ultimately has changed. So, I'd love to share with you more today about different ways that you can take a look at the way that you're structuring your time to get the maximum results that you're looking for. But before we dive in, I would like to take a couple of minutes. I'll probably break us up into those of us who are joining live, we'll break up into a couple of small groups and just would love to have you cover these couple of things. I think it's always refreshing to connect with other like minded professionals and business owners. So if you could share in this small group time that we have together, your name, where you're located, maybe a little bit about your company, what you do, and then answering the question if you could have 1 extra hour per day, what would you do with it? And that could be personal, it could be business related, entirely up to you. No wrong answer here, but I'm going to go ahead and break us up into small groups. So I'm just going to pause our recording here for a moment. All right, welcome back, everybody. So I would love to know, how would you spend 1 extra hour per day if you could get that? Just go ahead and enter in the chat. I'm curious. Like I said, it could be personal, it could be business related. What would you spend your time on? Exercise, love it. Yep. Yes. Extra hour in the evenings with your husband. Awesome. Extra morning time set up the day. Wellness, meal planning. These are all really good. Relaxing at our farm and campfire. Awesome. I love these. These are great. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and reshare my screen again and we'll get going. Okay. Awesome. So, thank you so much for participating in that time. I think that it's really fun to have some time to connect with other participants and get to know each other a little bit better, maybe share about what you've got going on in your business and so on. But I wanted to give you a preview of where we're headed in terms of the workshop for today. So, what we're going to do in our interactive workshop, and I say interactive because I want you to feel free to ask questions as you go. Feel free to take yourself off mute or enter something in the chat. Happy to answer those as we go along here today. Certainly don't be shy. This is not intended for me just to be talking at everybody the whole time for the next hour. But during our workshop, we're going to cover a couple of things. We're going to set a few intentions and clarify a few things to set the stage for being able to build our dream ultimate CEO calendars. We're going to go through 5 steps to create that ultimate CEO calendar. If you don't already, go ahead and open up the link to the handouts that I put in the chat, or if you have them in your email. When I sent them over to you, maybe you've printed them off. Go ahead and make sure that you have those available to you. We'll have a little bit of work time in between. There's a lot to cover. To be perfectly honest, I probably could have made this a half day workshop if we really wanted to get into it. So I had to limit it to a certain extent here, but we'll have a little bit of work time in between. And then at the end here, I will draw the winner of the CEO Power Hour session where we can dive in deeper into um, not only building your ultimate CEO calendar, but taking a look at all of the things that you have going on in your business and looking at how we can refine and tweak those to make them even more effective for you going forward. So, setting a few intentions before we dive in here for the next hour, I just encourage you to completely clear your mind of maybe any current constraints, routines, or obligations that you have that maybe currently could be standing in your way of the ultimate schedule that you would have for yourself. Just take this time to really play around and give yourself permission to experiment and create that ideal schedule during the next hour. So then one thing that I also wanted to cover before we dive into the 5 steps to creating your CEO calendar is I encourage you to picture a CEO that you admire. Maybe somebody you follow on social media, maybe somebody you've seen speak, or maybe you've read their book, and just think about, what their role might look like or what their day-to-day might look like. And maybe think about, what does a CEO do? Or what doesn't a CEO do? I asked that, and I want us to pause for a minute because I think that so many of us have been working so hard for so long and doing whatever it takes to keep this business running and to make it successful that we kind of forget for a second, like, what should I be doing as a CEO? What are other CEOs doing or not doing? Does anybody have some ideas as to what a CEO does or doesn't do that they want to share? I can share with you a couple of things that I think a CEO does. I picture them standing in a conference room or a boardroom and leading their team and solving big problems and setting big goals. I think of them meeting with other leaders and exploring maybe some joint ventures or some shared opportunities. I think about launching new products or new exciting services. Some things that maybe they don't do when I think about it, like I'm picturing Sarah Blakely of Spanx right now. She might not be the current CEO, but you get the idea. Maybe back in the day she was doing all the things when she was growing her company, but nowadays I don't think she's invoicing retailers for the products that they're shipping to their stores. I don't think she's answering the customer service phone calls that are coming in. I don't think she's actually at the factory and making her clothing and her shapewear. I don't think she's doing those things to this day. So I think, roles evolve, but when I think of a CEO, I'm thinking of the big picture opportunities, not so much like the little things that do need to get done in a business, but not necessarily something that the CEO needs to do. Does anybody else have anything that comes to mind or to add or share with that? Feel free to take yourself off mute or enter in the chat, whatever's more convenient for you. Okay. Before we move on, I wanted to share with you a video that I think provides a visual explanation of ultimately what we're trying to do here. Now, this is a video of a conference with Stephen Covey back in 1994. And he does this beautiful visual of big rocks versus pebbles and kind of where everything fits within your life. So, like I said, this is old. You might get a kick out of the quality of the video. You might get a kick out of some of the outfits and hairstyles and everything, but I promise you it is a good one. So we'll take a minute to watch this and then we'll go into the steps to building our calendar.
Your name is?
Elizabeth.
Elizabeth. You have a work life?
I do.
Family life as well?
Mm-hmm.
Children?
Not yet.
Not yet. What's the nature of your work assignment?
I direct an international firm.
An international firm?
Mm-hmm.
So you really are interfacing with all kinds of people in the firm and outside the firm.
That's right.
You want a rich personal life and a rich family life. Do you ever feel like you get bogged down in the thick of thin things?
Yes.
Well, that might be analogous to all these little, small things that tend to fill our life. And that just little by little, they just accumulate. Now, your job, you can't go above this, is to get all those large rocks in the jar. Good luck. What's that one called?
Q2, planning, preparation.
Right. Planning, preparation, prevention, and empowerment. Mm-hmm. Okay, the next rock she's putting in there is called relationships and family. We didn't look at that third rock you put in there. That's employment, some key employment issue, and then you put major projects here. I can't get it above there.
I haven't worked it yet.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Is that fair?
Yeah, that's fair. That's called service, community, church. Do you ever feel like this?
Yes.
How many feel like this? By moving the little things around, you might squeeze in one more of those big major things. It's almost. Wow, that is good. You know, if it doesn't fit, force it. Here's something that's called urgent and important. It's a quadrant 1 thing that is blindsiding you, that it's your biggest client, that if you don't get back to that client now, you've given up your vacation.
No.
And you have no special block of time just for yourself. I'll tell you what you can do if you want to.
What's that?
You can take a whole different approach. You have a totally fresh bowl. You can work out of a different paradigm altogether.
Well, then I'd rather put these in the bottom and then pour the little pebbles on top.
Employment,
Big opportunity,
big opportunity.
important and urgent, block of time. Those young children keep looking at me. Glad my husband's not here. No, I dump these in there.
Okay? That's great.
Okay, does anybody have, before we dive into step number 1, does anybody have any ahas or anything that stood out to them about that video? Okay, awesome. I just think that it's a great example of ultimately what we're trying to accomplish here when we talk about time blocking or setting up our ultimate schedule for our CEO role, is focusing on those big rocks, because inevitably all those little pebbles will find their way in. But by having dedicated time connected and reserved for those big rocks per se in your life, we can find ways to have everything else fit the way that we need them to. But that being said, wanted to move on to step number one with creating your dream calendar, which is to identify your non negotiables for optimal functionality. And you could substitute the word for functionality for productivity, well being, but really what we're after here are first starting off with what fills your cup? What keeps you energized? What fuels your creativity and keeps you grounded? Those are the things that we want to make sure that we plan for first. Because being your best in your role as the CEO of not only your company but also your life, it takes energy. And so we can't give that energy if we ourselves are not doing things to ultimately charge our energy up. So some of these things might look like activities that keep you centered and grounded. Maybe you love to go for walks each day. Maybe you've got a walking trail by your house. Maybe you enjoy listening to podcasts and that's something that you like to prioritize on a daily basis. Those activities. We've talked about morning routines. We talk less about evening routines or bedtime routines just to prioritize your day and give yourself the best start to a day, but then also the best way to kind of wind down and wrap up and complete each day. Hobbies and personal interests. Certainly, we want to reserve time for those because those are energizing and those are fun. I simplified and said movement. So that could be various forms of exercise, walks, maybe it's yoga, what have you, and certainly sleep, wanting to make sure that we are getting the adequate sleep that we need. And then also just wanted to mention, as driven people, it can be really easy for us to lose sight of some of the other things that maybe aren't quite as, that don't seem quite as demanding or time sensitive or deadline oriented as our business. But it's important for us to incorporate our loved ones into our schedule as well. So maybe what this looks like is setting boundaries around start or end times each day. Maybe it's blocking special time for family dinners. Maybe it's date nights. And by the way, this is probably the best photo I could find for a couple on a date night because when I was searching, the couples were all over each other. It was a little odd. Anyway, I shared that just as kind of a funny moment. You would be surprised at how deep I had to dig for a realistic date night photo for this presentation. But just wanted to share those couple of things and get you thinking in terms of that first before we start diving into work life. So, if you take out the dream calendar spreadsheet that I sent over, and again, the link is dropped in the chat, if you want to go in and start adding some blocks for not only yourself, but also your loved ones. And, you're welcome to be as detailed as you like. Like I said, we don't have enough time for us to fully build all of this out together during the call today. But if you want to start blocking out, what I would start with is even basics like sleep. Ultimately, what time do you need to go to bed each night? What time do you want to get up each morning? And then kind of build out from there that personal time. I'll give you a couple of minutes and then we'll move on to step number two. And again, just as a reminder, as you're working here, I'm here to answer any questions that come up as you go.
Melissa, we're only doing our personal stuff?
Yep, go ahead and start with your personal stuff first, and then we'll start building out our work days.
Okay.
Yeah. Yes, Rose, definitely. Those boundaries can be hard when it's that delicate balance of wanting to be available and then also have your off time as well. Totally get that. Yeah, so just to recap, on the personal side of things, want to focus on things like sleep, blocking time for a morning routine or an evening routine or both. Even meal times. How often have we eaten at our desks or skipped breakfast and we're just on the run, on the go? Family activities in the evening, if your kids are involved in sports or other activities, exercise for yourself, other hobbies and things that you want to make time for throughout the week. These are all great things to start. I like to start here because the work stuff can always creep up. Give you about another minute and then we'll move on to step number 2. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and move on to step number 2. We can always come back to this one during some upcoming work time. But step number 2, basically, before we plot out our ideal work days and look at the structure of our given work week, we're going to go ahead and sort out all the things that we have to do so that our big rocks start to stand out. So we're going to start by sorting. And you can think of this kind of like if you have a cupboard or a closet or maybe even an attic or garage in your home where it's like, okay, here's all the things. Here's all the things that I use and I'm keeping. Here's maybe all the things that I can donate because I no longer use. Here are the things that maybe I just need to throw away. We're going to think about that in terms of our to-do list. So if you could take out the priority planner sheet that I emailed to you, or again, that link is in the chat. And then we're going to go through and think of our time in terms of these 4 categories. So we want to think of things that generate new business soon. So maybe these are sales calls, or maybe these are sending contracts over for new projects to a potential client. Generates new business eventually. These are things like your marketing activities, networking. Maybe it's creating a new product or service. We're working on that. It's not quite available for sale now, but it's something that will be in the near future. Business management, these are things like the inevitable day-to-day things that need to get done. It's the billing, it's the payments, the vendor payments. Maybe it's answering questions from your team, things like that, just keeping the business going. And then other miscellaneous tasks. Couple other things to think about here when you're taking a look at your to-do list and thinking through the things that you need to do over the course of a given day or a given week. Think about some projects as well. Maybe a few examples of some projects that you have going on or projects that you have in the queue that you want to do. Maybe it's a joint venture or partnership. Maybe there's a new marketing campaign. Maybe you're working on implementing a new software that's going to save you a lot of time. Maybe it's even cleaning up your files because you're finding that it's becoming difficult to find the things that you need to find. Whatever those might be, I'm going to have you take a few minutes here to start jotting some of these things down in each of these 4 categories. And again, let me know if you have questions on this before we move on to the next step. We're just going to be sorting for now. Let's see, business management. Question from Emily. Would business management include delivering our services? Like for me, yeah, that's a great question. So I would put that in the business management category because it's tricky because obviously if you don't do it, you ultimately eventually don't get paid, or, ultimately that client goes somewhere else, but it's not generating new business, it's sustaining existing business. So I think that would be a fair statement to put that into business management in the day to day. Great question. And I'll give you another couple minutes to keep plotting out and thinking through all the things that you have on your to do list and where they might fall in this sorting exercise. Okay. And then as we're wrapping up, plotting out our to dos in those categories, go ahead when you're ready. Start putting stars next to the items that directly impact the growth of your business and any other items that only you can do. What we want is ultimately our big rocks in the business to start to emerge in this exercise, what those things are. Again, relating it back to, as the CEOs of our companies, what are the most important things that we need to be spending our time on and prioritizing throughout the course of a given week? Okay. So, next, what we're going to do is we're going to consider if there's anything that shouldn't be on the list at all. So, if you take a look back at your sorted to do list, and then also if you just take a minute and really consider the current state of your business, maybe the overall picture of what your work life looks like right now, what is draining your time and energy? So these things might be, for example, products or services that maybe are challenging to deliver. Maybe they're kind of cumbersome. Maybe there are things that are just not as profitable as others that you're offering, or maybe things that maybe are no longer exciting to you, and you'd like to focus your time and energy on other services or products that you enjoy more than that. Maybe it's non-ideal clients who are monopolizing your time and just taking a lot of energy. Maybe it's fixing work that non-ideal team members are doing for you. Maybe it's unnecessary or unproductive meetings, and that could include groups that just are no longer a fit for you. I know, for example, I was a part of a referral networking group, oh, probably about a good 5 years ago now, and we had a great run in that group. But then eventually it just got to a point where it wasn't the right fit for me. No shade on that group at all. It was a great group, but ultimately it was just time for me to move on. These are things that ultimately, as you grow and expand your company, nothing's going to last forever. So, now is always a great time to reevaluate the things that you're doing and what's no longer a fit. Now, that being said, also wanted to mention here, these areas could be an indication of maybe some boundaries that just need a little clarification or reinforcement. So maybe in the example of that non-ideal client, maybe it's not so much that you want to terminate your working agreement with them and go separate ways. Maybe it's re-evaluating the best way that you are exchanging communications, where maybe there's another method of exchanging information that doesn't involve receiving text messages to your phone at all hours of the day, for example. We can take a look at some boundaries here, but ultimately, we want to be honest with ourselves and reevaluate some things that are draining our time and energy. So, in this action step, I would look at your list again, maybe cross out any items that are just no longer aligned for you, or maybe on the back of that sheet, just make a note of any items that came to mind as we've been talking about this. And just note some things that maybe need to be resolved, or maybe some things that you want to consider discontinuing offering in the future, or maybe there are some working relationships that need a little attention. Maybe they need to be structured differently, or maybe ultimately you're no longer a fit for. So I'll give you a minute just to jot down anything that came to mind here before we move on to the next step. And again, if you have any questions, happy to answer them as we go. Okay. Step number 4. Now we're starting to get to the good stuff, where the rubber is starting to meet the road. All right. So the next thing that we want to do is consider delegating the non-CEO tasks and projects so that we can gain leverage over your time and ultimately maximize your results. So I included a sheet for you, a list of some of the common tasks that our VA team is asked to take over for our clients. So if you want to pull out that list, and also keep your sorted to-do list handy here, and then add at the bottom to this anything else in addition to these common examples that I included, of what might be able to be taken off your plate. And this is something that I like to revisit over and over again, because maybe right now it doesn't necessarily make sense for me to offload something, but 6 months from now, maybe that is the next priority on that list. So I highly encourage you to review this on a regular basis. But for now, let's go ahead and start gathering a list of the things that you would like to take off your plate, whether it's using these or some of the other items that you listed in your sorting exercise. So if you want to add that to the left column on your sheet, And then on the right-hand column, go ahead and just give your best guess as to how many hours you're spending on this per week. Now, if this is something that maybe you do once a month, like maybe once a month I go in and pay all of my team members. Maybe if you want to add team payments, and then let's say you're spending an hour, maybe put down 15 minutes just to convert it to a weekly amount here. But I'll go ahead and give you a few minutes to start filling this out and start taking a look at how much time could we actually potentially free up and reserve for those bigger rocks. So when you think back to the video, again, focusing our time on the bigger rocks and time block accordingly in our schedules, but then also taking a look at what do we do with all of these pebbles in this busy work that can sometimes keep us stuck. So I'll give you a couple minutes to fill this one in. Okay. Absolutely. Thanks so much, Rose, for joining us. Absolutely. You'll be getting a link to the recording so you can catch up on the rest of it. Appreciate you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Give you another minute or so. Okay. Now, we're not going to dive too deep into the math here during our call today, just for, concerns of time, but wanted to mention that it is important for you to understand as a CEO what your time is worth and what kind of return or yield would it be for you to get some help with these miscellaneous tasks so that you can focus more of your time on those bigger rocks, those needle movers that drive your business forward. So one thing that I will tell you for sure is that what your time is currently worth is not your current salary, what you are paying yourself. So a few things when we look at what our time is worth, a few things to consider. How many hours do you spend each week on busy work? And if you use that time instead to do revenue generating, impactful work, what might you accomplish instead? And maybe a more of a non-monetary example here as well to consider is what if you could be more relaxed and present with your loved ones because you're not trying to do all the things and trying to keep so many balls juggling in the air at one given point in time. So, a general basic math example here that I like to share during these presentations is, what would be the potential return on investment for delegating or outsourcing some of this admin, some busy work that you yourself don't need to be doing? So, let's say you work full time in your business and you figure you probably spend about half your time doing this busy work that could potentially be outsourced. And let's say you decide, I'm going to hire a part time assistant, and that person gets paid $25 an hour. Through over the course of a year, we're at about $26,000 to pay that part time assistant to do maybe those admin, those marketing tasks for you so that you can spend more of your time on the larger, big picture needle movers that really build up and scale your business. And so in that time, maybe you say that I could probably work with 5 more clients a month. Maybe you are a photographer and you can shoot, 5 more shoots in the course of a month because you're not doing all the back ends behind your business. And each of your packages on average is about $1,500 each. So that would be an additional $7,500 in revenue each month, which comes out to about $90,000 per year in new sales. So when you take a look at $90,000 of new business gained and $26,000 paid out for some of that admin support that freed up that time, that is more than a 3x ROI for investing in getting some help with those things. Now, I did include on the back of your sheet, and we're not going to walk through this together step by step during the call today, but I'll give you an opportunity to get some help with this if you'd like, one on one after the call today. But I did include on the second page of that handout that included the list of the busy work and the estimated hours per week that you spend on it. I'm giving you a formula here that you can walk through to see, what is your time worth as a CEO and what might you be able to expect as a return for outsourcing some of those things. Okay. So, for the next action step on your list here, if you go back to all of those things that are taking your time, maybe not necessarily growing and expanding your business, I recommend going back to that list and writing down who might be able to help you with those things. Now, it might be a name of someone on your current team, or maybe it is the type of person that you need some help from. So, maybe you need to consider hiring a bookkeeper to help you with your client invoicing and paying your vendor bills. Maybe it means hiring a content writer to help you get your marketing emails sent out each month, just to give you some examples. So I would go back through and write down who are some people who could help you get these things done. And then just make a note to, as a reminder for yourself, to follow up with these people or look for people who might be able to provide support in that area. And I'll give you a couple of minutes here to make some notes. Okay, before we dive into step number 4, I just want to pause for a minute and give you an opportunity to schedule a quick 15-minute call with me. This is not a sales call. This is simply an opportunity for you to connect with me one to one and get some of your more specific questions answered. Some of those questions might be clarification on what your highest priorities are. Maybe it's to get some outside perspective on releasing things that are no longer aligned. Maybe you're feeling like, I've been focusing on this type of work, but I really want to start pursuing this over here. Certainly happy to provide some outside perspective on how you might be able to navigate that. Maybe it's help with determining what to delegate next and where you might be able to find that help. Working on that time calculation exercise. Happy to walk through that with you on a one-on-one basis. Anything else that is coming to mind during this presentation, I do have the QR code here up on the screen. If you want to scan that and schedule a time to chat with me on a one-to-one basis, be happy to do that with you in an upcoming meeting. So I'll keep that up for a second here, and then we'll dive into step number 5, last but not least. Okay. And that is to finish creating your ultimate CEO calendar. So I want to congratulate you for taking the time so far to do all of that sorting and figuring out really what needs to be on your ultimate CEO calendar, because we know that the answer certainly is not doing all of the things. So going back to your dream calendar sheet, I recommend plotting out your work calendar, focusing on these things, typically in this order. And this is how I personally built my calendar. I'll show you a couple of tips here as you're writing. But number one, your highest priority tasks and projects, also known as your needle movers, also known as your high impact activities. These are those big rocks, those things that generate new business now, or those things that will be generating new business eventually. Those are those initiatives. Want to make sure that we're prioritizing those each week. I also, when I'm creating my ultimate schedule as the CEO of my company, I like to also pencil in designated times to check email. I personally find that if I'm in my email throughout the day and I see new things popping up, I can get really distracted. And also, then it kind of pulls me into reactive mode because I feel like I need to jump in to every conversation or question that's coming my way. So I like to designate times to check email. Also, free tip here, I use Boomerang to pause my inbox in between those times. Again, I will share that QR code one more time if you want to chat further about any of this. Happy to answer questions specifically there. Um, Another thing that I look for when I'm plotting out my ultimate calendar is openings for high quality meetings. I like to leave open space for people to schedule with me, whether it be maybe in my case, potential team members who would be an amazing support for some of our clients where they have a skill that's highly sought after. Maybe it is calls with potential clients. Maybe it's calls with referral partners, things like that. Want to make sure that I am leaving space for high quality meetings. Also, blocking time for just those miscellaneous things that maybe right now don't make sense to outsource that you're going to retain for now, but making sure that we have time blocked to do some of those things. And lastly, I also like to have a little time at the end of each day just to wrap things up, maybe to finish up a few emails, maybe look ahead at my schedule for the upcoming day and look ahead at any prep work that needs to be done for those. This is what I encourage you to focus on through the basically use this as a lens for creating your ultimate CEO calendar. Now, as you're working on this sheet, I'm going to go ahead and just show you real briefly here. And I realize that this is small, it's hard to read, but this is an example of a calendar that I created back in fall. Now, this is something that I'm going to be revamping again because we're in the process of launching a podcast. So, podcast recording time will be one of the big rocks that I'm blocking on my calendar here. But as you can see, I've got times blocked off for some email triage in the morning and some daily wrap ups, things like that. Just to give you an example of what this looks like for me. I think it's always helpful and frankly kind of interesting to see how other people are structuring their time. Again, I'll leave this up for a minute while you're writing, and then I have a couple more tips here as you're working. A few other helpful strategies here that I wanted to share. Certainly consider batching or consolidating repetitive tasks. As you may have seen briefly on my example, on Mondays, I have about 45 minutes blocked off for accounting tasks and finance tasks. It's not something that I'm doing all throughout the week. It's every Monday taking a look at what's coming in, what's going out, and making sure that everything is tracked on, some of our goal sheets and also lining up with our projected versus our actuals, things like that. I'm also designating time for meetings to avoid a choppy schedule. So, when I did a time management exercise with one of my business coaches, the first thing she pointed out is, man, you're having a call, then you have a little work time, then you have another call, and you got a little work time. She's like, that's a lot of switching back and forth for your brain. What if we have these mornings and these afternoons reserved for meetings? And certainly, if you need to accommodate a special request for a special time, that's up to you. But she's like, I would rather you have less availability for other people to dictate your schedule and structure your calls in a way that also um, maintains your energy throughout the day, where it's less switching back and forth on the brain. And also giving yourself weight space, making sure that we're not packing so much in a day where it's feeling stressful. So I'll give you a few more minutes to keep filling in your dream calendar sheet. I'll go back to the first slide here, which kind of walks through the way that I start adding things back in. And certainly feel free to ask questions. Give you a few more minutes to keep writing and playing around with your schedule and how things might look for you moving forward. And then we will wrap things up so you can continue on with your day. Okay. All right. Just wanted to give you one last chance here. If you are interested in scheduling a 15-minute call with me just to walk through anything one on one that came up during this conversation, again, maybe there's some clarification. Maybe you need some help with prioritizing what to delegate next. Maybe it's diving deeper into that what's your time worth exercise. I have the QR code up here one last time for you to grab a spot on my calendar that's convenient for you. Okay, and drum roll, please. The winner of our CEO Power Hour session with me is Shane. So, Shane, congratulations. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I will reach out to you via email with some details about what we can cover on this Power Hour session call and get something on the calendar. So, be on the lookout for that email. Thank you so much to everyone who took the time to join us live and so many other busy CEOs who are taking the time, penciling in on their calendar to watch this replay. I appreciate all of you. It is an honor to share what I've learned over the years and continue to learn and evolve myself. And I hope that this was helpful for you in looking at how you can structure your time a little bit differently and in a way that supports you as a person and the whole person, not just as a business owner, and also how to make the best use of your time for the goals that you've set for yourself. I'd love to keep in touch with you. Feel free to connect with me on social media. I'm active on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. I've also included my email address and website below on this slide in case you want to check things out or connect with me further. Again, thank you so much. I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Feel free to reach out if there's anything that I can help you with in your journey as a CEO. Take care, everyone. Bye bye.